refactoring versus rewriting of code.
A refactor, in terms of a computer science term, usually just means we need to change something within another thing.
It's the whole project, or can you just rewrite sections of an application? How do we start to differentiate and determine whether we need to refactor the code or rewrite the code? All right, Cody, today we are in the studio and we get to talk about refactoring versus rewriting of code. What are the differences? What are the benefits? Why would you do one versus the other? So we've talked in the past, of course, about our code audits that we do here at Bixley. If you have a legacy project, being one that has existing code already, you come to us, we're gonna start by doing an audit of some sort and figuring out what's actually going on with your code base. So when we get in there, what do we actually do with this code? How do we start to differentiate and determine whether we need to refactor the code or rewrite the code?
Well, the first thing among this whole audit process is obviously going to just look at the code, understand it, look at documentation. Hopefully there is some, fingers crossed, right? Yeah. But the goal here is that really both of those are bad scenarios to be in a lot of the time. Whenever you have a legacy project and you hear the words refactor or rewrite, a lot of the times people have kind of a hip shot reaction. That's going to be like, that's money. And so when we do that first audit process, the main thing we're trying to figure out is not if whether we should rewrite or refactor. It's to see if we can actually understand the maintainability of the project as it currently is. And when we determine in situations where a legacy project, one that's been around for a long time, doesn't really have I guess you could say the shell or bones necessary to be a production, like enterprise grade application, client dependent on what they actually need to use it for, that's when we start recommending a refactor or a rewrite. And the difference between the two is a refactor.
What's the difference?
Let's get back to the refactor versus rewrite. A refactor is usually a partial rewrite, basically. Whereas a rewrite means typically we're completely redoing it from scratch. So
is this the whole project, or can you just rewrite sections of an application?
It's possible, but that is effectively refactoring at that point.
Okay.
A rewrite typically, in terms of whenever it says, hey, we need to rewrite this whole thing, usually that's the context, is that we need to do the whole thing if the word rewrite is being used. Whereas a refactor, in terms of a computer science term, usually just means we need to change something within another thing. We're changing a factor of the application.
We got the car, it needs new tires, it needs the oil change, and you should probably look at the brakes.
Correct, yeah,
As
exactly.
opposed to, you should probably just get rid of this like Sprinter van because it just isn't working out for you.
So to kind of dial that back down, is a refactor will be determined to be the right choice if an area of the application is troublesome or unmaintainable, versus a rewrite is when there are systemic issues that cannot be fixed, or I should say cannot economically be fixed by refactoring so much of the application that you end up with a rewrite anyway. So that's basically the difference there.
And here at Bixley, what is our stance on when we get a code base? I mean, do you feel that our development team tends to be very like, let's refactor, rewrite heavy, or do we lean more towards the idea of let's see if we can keep that legacy project going?
For one, it's going to depend on client needs every time, which is usually the answer to a lot of these questions. But from a bias standpoint, we always try maintainability first. We try to actually take what we're getting, understand it as best we can, and then go forward with that to try and improve it over time, along with new features or whatever the other goals may be. So in a general sense, we do try to avoid refactors and rewrites as necessary unless it really just is not maintainable. And that can happen depending on the history of the project. So when it comes down to that, we'll recommend it, but we try to not if we can.
Yeah, because I mean, there's these larger business considerations that we always have to take into account when we're affecting our decisions. So what are some of these business considerations that come through that we're like, okay, well, here's why we might want to try and work with it, or here's why we might want to actually rewrite or refactor?
Well, I think it's going to come down to the business's goals for the project. If you need something that is extremely stable, like uptime, 99.99%, and you just have code that isn't effectively maintainable because it has too much complexity, it's not documented well, or it's using like legacy packages that don't exist anymore, that would be a strong case to refactor or rewrite a large portion of the application, because you, as a product owner, expect this thing to be up and working as often as possible, because either that's the goal of the application or you have essential business needs that rely upon it. Now that said, the considerations of the actual project scope, if you don't care if the application crashes sometimes, why refactor then? If it's already designed to be unstable and you've accepted that that's going to be a thing, like it's just an internal business tool for like a couple of people in a department to use, you probably don't need to worry about it too much, and you can kind of just accept that it's not going to be very stable. It depends on your goals there. And then abstracting away from, okay, what are the actual goals of reliability?
Right.
The next one is obviously budget, because
price, budget, yeah.
it gets extremely expensive to refactor or rewrite an application.
And time, too.
Yeah, and time. And sometimes refactoring...
I need this now, not in a month once it's
correct,
refactored.
yeah. And you have to consider time and, what are you going to do in the meantime while you're refactoring or rewriting? Because a rewrite basically means we're going to do the whole thing again. With all the things we've learned so far.
Yeah.
So sometimes that can mean a longer development cycle than the original application took. It could mean shorter, depending on if you just want to iterate over it and just try and improve the areas that are troublesome and update everything else in the process. And then the thing about refactoring, which is a little bit different, like I mentioned, than rewriting, is that you kind of have to estimate how long a refactor is going to take, because sometimes at a certain point when you just want to refactor an area of code, it may be that that area of code will be so complex to refactor because of the rest of the application that you probably should have just done a rewrite in the first place. But yeah, the budgetary constraints on top of that are a big deal, because if you want to do either of those options, a refactor or a rewrite, you got to have the money for it. Otherwise, you just aren't going to be able to do it, just like many other business goals. So yeah, the actual reliability goals and the budgetary constraints are the principal deciding factors for a refactor versus a rewrite versus just maintaining the application.
Gotcha. So as head of DevOps, you're handling the department, you have your team with you. What kind of things are you doing as a DevOps team? What kind of practices are you trying to put in place with either projects that we are starting from scratch, or practices that you're trying to introduce when someone brings us a legacy project? What are you trying to do to help keep things flowing in a proper manner so we're not having to deal with these rewrites and refactors?
Well, first off, all of the DevOps practices, because that's end film.
No, yeah, exactly.
But no, that's the goal of what DevOps as a central ideology is to improve maintainability and reliability at the same time. A lot of the times, what does that mean in reality?
Yeah, like practically, what does that look like?
That usually means going into any situation where you're going to be writing anything with an application, whether it's something that's legacy versus not, is going design first.
Okay.
And that means both in the idea of software design first, plan out what you're going to do before you do it, but also even UI and UX design. Because let's say if you wrote the code first and then you designed the UI for that code and you and you just kind of mesh them together at the end, chances are they're not going to quite meet up. It's like digging two tunnels at the same time and then trying to meet in the middle of a mountain.
Get real lucky, maybe, but it's tough.
Although I'm sure there's some civil engineers out there like, we do that all the time.
My job is.
But as a metaphor, it's difficult.
Yeah.
And because of that, if you're not quite aligned when you finally mesh the two together, a lot of times you're going to end up refactoring some stuff anyway. And then unplanned refactoring basically is just as bad as an unmaintainable code base, because you're just basically cowboy coding at that point. You're just fixing whatever needs fixing, not according to a plan. And that's the thing, is we're always very plan heavy, design first, as mentioned. So that's the principal area that I think is the most important thing that DevOps practices have to offer in terms of avoiding a refactor and rewrite, is simply planning out the application before it actually gets executed upon. And that's, of course, what we like to call road mapping here.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday, where Cody and Chris were talking all about the differences between rewriting and refactoring, when you want to start having that conversation about a legacy app, if you even want to do either one of those things, and how implementation of DevOps really helps you avoid that problem to begin with. If you have any questions about what they talked about today, go ahead and leave those in the comments section down below. And don't forget to check out the description box down below. We have a ton of really helpful links for you guys, including a link to our free custom software guide that just kind of gives you some tips and tricks and walks you through the process of planning out your own app idea. Now, if you feel like you're ready to get started on maybe developing that app or even just seeing if Bixley might be the right fit for you, check out our website, bixley.com. Right at the top of the homepage, there's a button that says Get My Roadmap. And what that allows you to do is actually set up a free 60-minute meeting and consultation with Chris himself. He'll give you all of his insight and feedback on your app idea, maybe even some estimates, and just seeing if we're the right fit for you. Until next time, this has been an episode of Bixley Tech Tuesday.